So this is Astropad Studio. There are two parts to it. One is an app that runs on your Mac, and right now it's only Mac only. And the other is an app that runs on your iPad. The iPad screen mirrors your Mac screen and basically turns your iPad into a full-blown drawing tablet. So this is Astropad Studio. There's also traditional Astropad. The difference between them is Astropad Studio is like the professional version of Astropad. With this professional version of Astropad, you're also getting a $60 a year annual subscription cost to go with it. I should also say, full disclosure, that Astropad actually sent me a code so that I could plug it in, so I did not pay for this app, but I am going to be reviewing it in the most unbiased way possible. So what are you actually getting for that $60? You're actually getting a lot, and it all comes down to settings. There are a ton of bells and whistles in this program. So we're going to start with drawing. How does that feel? It feels really good. The second I set it up, it set my pencil down on the iPad. I just thought like, whoa, this feels great. I've always had a hard time explaining that feeling. You know what I mean? It's not like a tactile thing. It's just something that you feel. And if something is off with your drawing tools, you just kind of know it. To me, Astropad always had that little thing. It was always just a little bit off, and I could never wrap my head around it. I could never find a way to explain it in these videos. It was really, really good, but it was just a little bit off. But whatever that was, it's gone now. It might be that the pixelation from previous versions are totally gone. That may have been that little line that separated it from other things that I've used. Just that slight improvement makes everything feel snappier and more real-time, and now you can even watch videos on Astropad. Since I don't know how to completely explain the feeling of drawing with a pen, why don't we just run it through a battery of tests? So first, I found a nice brush in Photoshop with no lag when I use it on my Mac. Some of the brushes I've used in past reviews I regret using because they had a little bit of lag to them, and I think it threw people off when they were watching it. I think the video also tends to exaggerate that lag, so I tried to find the best one that I could. So as my baseline, I am using a Wacom Intuos tablet. Even though I'm not particularly good at drawing on these things, it gives me a pretty good idea of what a smooth line feels like. That difference between that high pressure and that low pressure, and if I'm drawing quick lines or normal lines, what's going to happen. And then it's also going to show me what this brush looks like with virtually no lag. And I'm going to be looking at Astropad Studio, Astropad, and a little bit at Duet Display. First up is Astropad Studio, and I feel that the thick to thin is definitely different on this pen, but at the same time, I feel like it's definitely adequate. When I take a look at the hatch lines, they're not quite as thin. They're going thicker a little faster, but in Astropad Studio, I can also go in and adjust that pressure sensitivity and that pressure curve, so if I wanted to emulate the Intuos, I clearly can. And with all these hatch lines, it only dropped one of my lines when I was drawing it, and I think that's pretty impressive. Most of the time, it drops none. Here I'm drawing with the original Astropad, and the thick to thin is still pretty good. I like the way that this brush feels. But something I never really noticed before with the original Astropad is that my lines taper off a little bit differently, so the brush is rendering slightly differently in the original Astropad than it is in Astropad Studio, and in fact there's even a little bit of shoestringing at the end of these lines. So they've clearly done something in Astropad Studio to improve that performance of your line drawing. And this is Duet Display, and I will say off the bat that I use the same Photoshop, the same brushes, just different apps testing these things out. The only difference is Duet Display is mirroring my standard monitor instead of a Retina monitor, which might actually help it a little bit. But even though it has improved tremendously, I don't feel like I have the pressure thick to thin quite the same. You see the end of that swirly line is kind of blunt. Once I get to the hatching lines, when I pick up the pen, it doesn't always register immediately on super fast strokes. It's almost like everything I draw is like a half a tick behind where I want it to be. I can also tell that the way that Astropad Studio is rendering is different than the way that traditional Astropad renders. This is noticeable when you're drawing, but it's most noticeable when you're doing something like moving a window around. I'm playing a video here. We can see the pixelation in the original Astropad. As you can see here, Astropad Studio's video is super crisp. This is something that Duet Display has always done really well, and it's nice to see this make its way into Astropad Studio. So let's go on to the settings. What does Astropad Studio adding that wasn't in there before? The big thing is when I change apps, Astropad understands what app you have opened, and then it brings up customized shortcuts for that. It even does that for things like the Mac Finder window. And all of those settings across the board are completely customizable. So if I'm using like a traditional drawing tablet in Photoshop and then I switch over to Illustrator, what I have to do is go into the settings and change around my shortcuts and things like that. And Astropad kind of takes that out of the equation by remembering all those shortcuts on a program by program basis. And this was like one of those features I didn't even know I wanted until I had it. Now I'm like, this is great. Now it's entirely possible that other drawing tablets have done this and have been doing it for a while, but it's never something I thought to look for. But from here on out, I will be looking for that because I really liked it. It's just so nice to take out that constant fiddling. It's such a big time saver. It's also pulled in some of the really nice features from other apps like PROCREATE. You could use 2 fingers to undo, 3 fingers tapping on the screen to redo. It's borrowed those shortcuts. Since I use PROCREATE a lot, it feels very natural flowing between Astropad and PROCREATE now, and it kind of does a good job of melding the desktop together with the iPad experience. There's even a quick gesture for an eraser. If you set down 1 finger on the iPad and start using your pencil again, it's going to turn that pencil into an eraser. You've probably noticed on the screens that I'm showing here, there's a trailing line where it shows where your pencil already was. This was introduced in the first Astropad when it came out to make up for the lag. Now that the lag is virtually gone, you don't need that tail anymore, so you can just turn it off, or you can change the color of it. They've also added things like a pressure curve for the Apple Pencil, and they've also added some options for pressure smoothing. And also an on-screen keyboard. It's just a nice touch if you're renaming layers or want to specify a specific brush size. So no software is perfect, so I went looking for cons, and to be completely honest, this is really going to be nitpicking, but I might as well start with price. The price is $60 a year, and I know there's been some grousing about that not everybody is happy about the price, and from what I understand, they're going to continue to update the old Astropad app and this app. And I would say for me personally, even though there's a lot of cool stuff in here, I don't use Astropad enough to justify an annual subscription. I think if all I had was an iPad to work with, that might be a different story for me personally, but since I have other things to draw with, I tend not to use Astropad all that much. But if you're a professional and you're constantly switching programs and constantly adjusting your settings, I could see where something like Astropad Pro could really just pay for itself over a couple weeks. So it's a pro app, and if you're a working illustrator, you're getting a lot of pro features. Actually, when I started this video, I was writing a lot about the price and my thoughts on the App Store and just the business model for pro apps and illustrators, and I think it's a little wonky and broken. But that actually became a script unto itself, and I thought it just seemed out of place in this video. So later this week, I'm going to be publishing another video, where I talk a little bit about the price and kind of my deeper thoughts on it. The other thing that I ran into, which is more of a nitpick, is that I have customized the living daylights out of Photoshop over the course of my career. So every time I set it up, there's different shortcuts that I change and different settings that I mess with. And I found that Astropad Studio was dependent on me having like the same shortcut setup that every default instance of Photoshop has set up. So I found that since I have fiddled with Photoshop a lot, I had to fiddle with Astropad Studio a lot to get everything working again, to get my undos working, to get the pinch and zoom was something that really threw me for a loop until I went back and changed my settings. So I think if you use your software the way that the software makers intended, you'll be fine. If you go around and customize a lot of things, you're gonna have to go into Astropad Studio and customize a lot of things as well. So who is this for? I think it's for pro illustrators who want pro apps. That's who this is for. If you're one of the people who saw the $60 a year price tag and gagged on it, then it's probably not for you. And I think for the first time, Astropad has hit that level where I can say, yeah, totally, this replaces a traditional drawing tablet. And also in general, with the addition of a lot of these buttons and features in the on-screen keyboard, it makes using Mac OS with touch, which has always been nasty and I've always complained about, it makes it much, much easier. And that's kind of a little miracle in and of itself. So that is Astropad Studio. If you have any comments or questions, you can hit me up on Twitter. Also, you can use the comment section down below. I'm sticking to my Twitch streaming schedules, Tuesdays, Thursdays, 5 o'clock. That's all I have for this week. And if you find these videos useful, consider contributing to me on Patreon. Another way you can support me is by using the Amazon links down below in the comments. That's all I got for this week. I'll see you guys later.